Hello again, and welcome back to the That Was Stupid podcast. I am your host, John Seidel, and I am so excited to have you here again with us for this episode. And man, this episode is incredible. I did not know going into this episode exactly the extent of the water crisis in the world. Of course, we see things on TV and we see commercials and sometimes we get hit with a little bit of it. But my guest today, Christopher Beth, truly is doing some incredible work to bring clean water to the people of the world. And as true to this podcast, he has a That Was Stupid moment, and actually probably has more than one, as you're about to hear. But Chris decided to go on a trip with his daughter to the Amazon, and during that trip really was confronted head on with the clean water crisis. And as a business consultant, he decided to give it all up and help people get clean water. So you are about to hear an incredible story. But before we get there, as always, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast. If you are watching it on YouTube, would love for you to follow the channel there. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's talk to Chris about the incredible work that he is doing to bring clean water to the people of the world. Well, hey, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the That Was Stupid podcast. I am so excited to get into your story. And in fact, we were doing a little pre-talk, and not only your story, but there's another story that involves your wife that I hope that we can get into because it really fits the format of the podcast well. But before we get into everything, why don't you just kind of introduce yourself? Give us the high-level overview of who you are and what you do with the Bucket Ministry.
Sure. Well, John, thank you so much for having me on your podcast and letting me unpack a few stories. So my name's Christopher Beth. I get to serve with the Bucket Ministry as founder, director, but my official title is Chief Storyteller. And I think that throughout history, we all have great examples of great stories that we've been told. And I think that if they're well told, it will inspire and engage and maybe move somebody off the couch. So at the Bucket Ministry, we focus on sharing God's love through the gift of clean, safe drinking water. And how we do that is with a very simple water filter that attaches to any sort of bucket or receptacle that when allowed dirty water to flow through it, it will remove all the bacteria, all the parasites, all the protozoans down to a 0.1 micron level, which basically means that we can drink directly from a lake, a stream, a river. I've drank from far worse than that through this filter. And so we use that as a way to reach people with not only the physical gift, but we're reaching people with our faith at the same time and sharing with them what a relationship with Jesus could be like.
You know, even just there's so much in that introduction that just excites me. And I think, first of all, let me say, I love that you call yourself like chief storyteller, right? You know, part of what I do at my company is I say I tell people stories, right? It's one of the reasons I started this podcast, and you know, as people listen, it's like, you know, sure, we want people from all walks of life because all these people have great stories, and yours is one of them that we're about to get into. But let me pause real quick. You say you've drunk, whatever, from far worse than that. What is the most in a sense, disgusting thing that you have used your filter on?
Yeah. So, and you may ask yourself, why would you even do this, right? And so it was very important for us early on in this process to make sure that we put our mouth or our money where our mouth is. And we want to make sure that our teams feel as confident in these filters' ability to remove harmful bacteria and parasites that we're willing to drink the very water that we're telling people it's safe for them to drink through this filter. So I do these series of videos that my wife absolutely hates, but she's tolerating it at this point, and they're called "I Can't Believe He Drank That." And I try to find the worst water sources on the planet to drink from. And so a few years ago, I was in the Kibera slum in Nairobi, Kenya, and there's 400,000 people living with no social services. So most of the sewage runs down into a river that is below the slum. So that river consistently looks like a black milkshake because there's only 78 latrines to serve 400,000 people, John. So as you can imagine, stuff runs downhill, right? So I went down there to shoot this video, and literally it was like milkshake consistency, black, stagnant, the worst smell you could ever imagine in your life. There was diapers in the water. There was like a dead animal on the other side of the water. And
oh my goodness.
So I did this video and I drank it, and, there was no issues. But I got home and my wife, who was a nurse for 30 years, I showed her this video and she just walked away and she was shaking her head.
It gives new meaning to that phrase, like, would you kiss your mom with that mouth? Like, would you kiss your wife with that mouth? And you're like, yes, I would, because it's clean water.
But if we're going to tell somebody this filter is safe for them, we better have the utmost belief in its capacity as well.
Wow. And I've seen, and we'll give people the website towards the end where they can see the work that you're doing, but I've seen the pictures and watched the videos of holding up, the pre-treated, the pre-filtered cup of water and the cup of water that has been treated. And man, the stark difference is just incredible. I do have one follow-up question. When you drink that basically sewage water, I know it looks clean. Does it taste? What does it taste like? Can you taste any of the remnants?
Man, that's a great question. No one's ever asked that before, John. And everyone just assumes that it is taste-free. But the actual molecule that it affects taste is much smaller than 0.1 micron. So that tells you that the filter does not trap it and it goes through. In most cases, taste is a byproduct of organic matter that's in the water. And if the organic matter is big enough, the filter will take it out. But in many cases, it doesn't do anything for taste. So in this particular case, when I drank this water in this slum river, it tasted just like it smelled. So while it was safe, it was not pleasant. But the illustration was not lost. And a really cool story that came from that, I'll tell you really quick. There was two kids, and I say kids, they were probably 12, 14 years of age. And they were watching me do this on the side of this little river. And and this is in Kenya, right? So they go, "Hey, white man, why are you doing that?" And they couldn't believe that I was doing this, right? And so I look over at him and I said, "Well, let me tell you why. Have you ever heard about this guy by the name of Jesus?" And they're like, "No, who's that?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you about him." So I went on to tell him about Jesus. And one of these young men decided to start a relationship with Jesus that day because this crazy white guy is drinking sewage water through a filter.
We're going to get into the story, and I love that your faith drives the story, and people are about to hear that. But I love that there's all these kind of micro "that was stupid" moments, right? So we're going to talk about like leaving your business and starting this ministry, but also, I mean, literally the children in the slum are thinking, well, that's stupid, right? I mean, like, this guy is nuts. This guy is nuts. So I love that.
The title of your podcast, John, is maybe a summary for my entire life. So we could talk about hours of all these, well, that was stupid moments in my life.
Well, let's get into the first one, right? So we kind of gave an overview of what you're doing, but how did you get there? I think that story is fascinating, and it actually starts with your daughter and the Amazon River. So why don't you get into that and tell us how how it came about that you started the Bucket Ministry?
Yeah. So as a brief background, I never grew up in church. I did not have a relationship with Jesus, and I got in a horrible car crash with my daughter Savannah at the age of 40, and that's when I invited Jesus into my life. Was during that process. So prior to that, I had no real relationship with the church, with believers, and really had no other faith other than I thought I was in control. And so in 2012, my daughter Savannah ends up coming home from school, and she said she wants to go on this mission trip to the Brazilian Amazon. And my wife and I quickly look at each other and we're like, I don't know about that. I mean, she'd been to South Texas. We live in Dallas, so, could it be any further? Well, yes, it's a ton further. So Sherry and I, my wife and I, decide if Savannah is going to go, one of us is going to have to go with her. And at that point, I drew that straw. But I want to tell you, John, in the beginning of this, I did not go for any other reason than to bring my kid home. I think any father, any mother could understand that need to make sure your kid comes home from a trip to a foreign country. So we told her, hey, listen, if you fundraise and you contact all your friends, family, and if you raise the money, then we'll do this. And within 12 days, she had $4,000 raised for this trip. So I'm like, ugh.
I got to go.
Yeah.
And how old was she?
At that point, she was 15. Okay. 15, 16, somewhere around there. And but again, I went as a dad. I had no love or compassion for the Brazilian people. My only job that my wife set out and gave me was, you got to bring her home. So Savannah and I, we go to this first team meeting of the mission trip. And I had no experience with anything like this. And there's all these people talking about the different ministries, the different things they were going to do while they were on this trip. And I was radically uncomfortable because I'd never been around people like this before. And so fast forward a few months, we get on a plane in Dallas and we fly through Miami and then fly into Manaus, Brazil, which is right smack dab in the state of Amazonas, which is the Amazon basin, which there's more water than land. And it's one of the most remarkable places on planet Earth. So we get off the plane, we get through the airport, and we take this small bus to the river's edge, and we board a 3-story open-air riverboat. And when I mean open air, there were no cabins. We hung hammocks on the boat and slept open air as we went into the Amazon basin.
Wow.
And I remember this first night when we get on the boat and Savannah and I are hanging our hammocks, and she comes over to me and she goes, Dad, I think we made a mistake. At 11 p.m., John, it's like 95 degrees and about 110% humidity. It's just ridiculous.
Mosquitoes all over the place?
What's that?
Mosquitoes all over the place?
Oh, mosquitoes, bugs bigger than your head. I mean, just crazy stuff. And like alien-looking bugs. And I had no experience with this, right? I was a business consultant for 35 years. And as I said, I had no background with the church. And as a business consultant, my job was basically to help people make money. So It's not like I had any background in this. So we hang our hammocks that night and we go 18 hours into the Amazon basin on this open air riverboat. And we travel throughout the night and we wake up and you're just drenched in sweat and you got like bugs stuck to your face and stuff. And it's the weirdest environment ever. And so that first day when we got to where we were going to be working, we had a variety of people on the boat that were going to be doing different things, like a sports camp, like a soccer camp. We had a doctor, a dentist, and we were going to do VBS for the kids. And then there was this other team that the trip director called the faith team. And I remember this because I thought, I don't think I'd like to be on that team because it doesn't seem like anything I know anything about.
Not as exciting as a soccer camp or something like that.
Exactly. I'm thinking that's perfect for me. So at breakfast that morning, the trip director, she starts assigning all these people to different tasks, different ministries that were on that boat. And sure enough, she assigns me to the faith team. And I'm like, what the heck? And I said, can I trade with somebody else? Because this really isn't me. I don't know anything about that. And I don't know how to pray for people. It's just not my thing. Can I be on the soccer camp? And she goes, no, I think you ought to try it today. You might like it. So our job, John, on this trip was to go door to door and introduce ourselves and tell the villagers what we're going to do in their village that day, and then pray for them before we left. And so I went out with a pastor, an interpreter, and a couple other people and did this for the first 2 days. And I'm telling you, it was the worst 2 days of my life because I was so uncomfortable doing this. Again, I had no background with this. And here's people talking about Jesus, talking about their faith openly. And I'm just a business guy, right? And I'm stuck in this environment because I wanted to make sure my kid came home. So, I was praying, but I was praying that nobody would make me talk. I wasn't praying with the families. I was praying, dear Lord, please don't make me talk and say anything. So for the first 2 days, John, of doing this work in the Amazon, I didn't say a word. I was just present. So the third day comes, and I remember this like it was yesterday. And this was like 11 years ago. So the third day comes of doing this, and the trip director, Phyllis, after breakfast, she's now assigning what everybody's going to be doing. And I'm thinking to myself, dear Lord, let me be on the soccer team. Let me just go out and do this soccer stuff. And she's going around the room, and she gets to me, and I said out loud, soccer. Yeah, so at that point, she goes, okay, Chris, you're on the faith team again today. And I literally thought, I'm going to go to the bathroom and pretend like I'm sick and just stay on the boat for the day. I mean, I was so uncomfortable. I didn't want to do this. So I come out of the bathroom. I'm just going to have to man up. I'm going to go. So we were assigned to go across the river from the big boat we were in, take a smaller boat, and there was a house across the river that was right on the edge of the river. So I get in this boat with a pastor that I'd worked with the previous 2 days. His name was Ricky Knoll, and then an interpreter and a boat driver and a couple other people. I get in this boat, and just as I sit down in the small boat, John, Pastor Ricky gets up. And he walks out of the boat, and I'm like, hey, did you forget something? And he goes, you got this.
Because I'm going on a soccer team.
He goes, you got this. You handle it today. And I'm like, what? What do you mean I got this? I don't got anything. And I remember my last words before I saw him walk off. I said, please don't leave me. So now the boat driver left Pastor Ricky there. I'm going over to this house, And I have to lead this whole exercise, this whole intervention with these people. And I'm panicking. I mean, I am full on drenched in sweat. And it's not because it's hot. It's because I'm so nervous about talking to these people. So we pull up there, and I get to this point of saying, man, I think I'm just going to repeat what the pastor said the previous 2 days. So I'm all prepared, and I walk into this house, and this little Brazilian woman that was so sweet, she looks at me up and down, and she goes, "Are you thirsty?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm thirsty. And honestly, prior to this day, I never even knew or gave consideration that there was a world water crisis. I didn't know anything about that. Man, I've lived a privileged life where if I was thirsty, I went to my refrigerator and put the cup underneath the water filter and got a cup of water out of there, or I bought a bottle of water. And so I never considered that people did not have that very thing that I took for granted most of my life. So
up until this point, by the way, Chris, are you guys just drinking like bottled water?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the boat? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were drinking bottled water. The boat brought like 35-gallon jugs of water for the trip. So she asked me if I'm thirsty, and I said yes, and I got so excited because I was literally super thirsty. And I expected her, John, to go to a refrigerator that didn't exist and to get me a bottle of water that didn't exist. But what she did in turn is she went to her kitchen and got 2 cups. They were mismatched and they were cracked. And then she's taken these cups and she walks out the front door of her home, which was on the edge of the river, and stands on this little dock area, and she bends down and she puts these 2 cups in the water, and she starts filling these cups up with river water.
Wow.
So I'm sitting here in the doorway, and I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is this woman doing? Surely she doesn't think I'm going to drink river water. So sure enough, she comes in, hands 1 cup to me, 1 cup to my interpreter. And there's these points in life where you got to make a quick decision. That's right. It's going to affect your outcome, right? And on one hand, if I don't drink this, she's going to think I'm rude. On the other hand, if I drink this, I'm going to be sick the entire trip. I'm going to spend the rest of the trip in the bathroom. And so at that point, I look over at my interpreter, and he's wagging his finger, no, don't do that. So I realize I can't drink this, but the gravity of this situation now is overwhelming to me that I realize this is all they have to drink.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I never even thought that people drank out of a river. And here I am discovering this is all these sweet people have to drink. So the next thing that happens is probably the biggest thing that changed everything for me is at that point, I'm holding this glass of water and literally there's things swimming in it. And I heard something, John, that I've never heard before. And I will tell you, prior to this day, I've never been in the business of hearing the Lord's voice and receiving any direction. Or maybe I just didn't listen or I didn't accept what he was trying to do. But as I was holding this glass of water, I heard 2 words, and they were very clear, and it was help them. It was so clear that I turned around and looked, and I thought it was someone talking behind me.
Wow.
But it came with 0 instructions. I didn't know if help them meant, was I supposed to give them $20? Am I supposed to cook them dinner? Am I supposed to fix their boat motor? I don't know what help them means. So we leave there that day. Savannah and I make our way home, and I leave with this burden of help them. What is help them? And I get home, start researching this thing called the world water crisis. And I find out some statistics that are just frightening. One of them being that almost 800 million people lack access to the very thing I've taken for granted most of my life, and that's clean, safe drinking water.
Wow.
And then at that point, I find out that over 700 kids die every day from something that we have a solution for, and that's that they're dying from unclean water. I also find out that a majority of the African countries, women don't name their children for the first 2 years of that child's life.
Holy hell.
So I read this in like 2012, John, and I'm like, that can't be possible. There's no way that there's a place in the world where women don't name their kids because they don't think they're going to make it. And then I go to Uganda one year after this, and I meet a lady, and I ask her what the name of her child was, and she shakes her finger, no. And I'm like, what does that mean? And she goes, we don't name our children for the first 2 years because most of them don't make it.
No way. Wow. Wow.
So here's this overwhelming problem that I've discovered, right? And at that point, I think what helped them means is maybe I'm supposed to drill a well. Maybe I'm supposed to figure out how to deliver cases of water down to Brazil and help these people. And I had no idea that any of this had anything to do with introducing people to Jesus. So I start researching solutions, and I look at water wells, biosand filters. There's a plethora of great filters out there, but they're all super expensive or super complicated. You got to be an engineer to run the thing. And then one day, my wife and I are at a camping supply store here in Dallas called REI, and we see this filter made by Sawyer Products on the shelf. And it was originally developed for camping and backpacking. And at that point, I look at this package and I'm like, well, let's buy a couple of these, see what they do. And so I bought a few, took them home, started researching the filter more, read the lab results, and I found out, my goodness, this takes almost everything that's biological out of unclean surface water and could be a solution to these people in the Amazon. So the next thing that happens is a little more extreme. I decide, hey, let's do an experiment, and I made my family join me in this experiment, and we drank lake water out of Lake Ray Hubbard here in the Dallas area. We drank it for a week through this filter.
Wow, a week?
Yeah, and by the end of this, none of us could tell the difference between the water that came out of the filter, if it was cold, and bottled Ozarka.
Nothing says family bonding like drinking dirty lake water. I mean, I don't know, Chris. I think you just unlocked the next Seidel family vacation.
Well, there you go, and I can hook you guys up. I've got a few filters, but at that point, I thought experiment passed. So we brought filters back down to the Amazon, and that's how all of this.
How many did you call the company? Like, how did you just buy them off the shelves at REI?
Just bought them off the shelves in the beginning, and they were super expensive to do it that way. I remember this first trip, I was trying to bring like 80 of these filters down there, and it was going to cost like $5 or $6 grand for all these filters. And I hate asking people for money. I'm just going to be honest. I'm a lousy fundraiser. And but I found the secret to fundraising, and that was just asking friends and family so much that they give you money to shut up. And so I raised this money to take these 80 filters down, and had this amazing experience of distributing these filters and learning more that this filter was more about a tool to introduce people to a relationship with Jesus. Now, it's going to save lives physically, but the illustration of the dirty water and that dirty water having things in it that if we drink that dirty water straight, it's going to make us sick. It could kill us. It could make my family sick. It could kill my family. But that filter, and if we compare it to what Jesus has done for us, redeems us. That filter redeems this water and gives us safe water. And we found out that the connection between the filter and our faith was so strong that the filter really, at this point, has become a tool for us that we can share our faith around the world, and we can address a major physical problem, and that is people drinking unclean water. But we can also use that at the same time to introduce them to a friend that will never leave them.
Man, wow. I mean, there's that so much there. I mean, I love all the aspects of that story. I have there's one like small burning question, and that is, when you
just one?
Yeah, right, exactly. When that woman, and by the way, when you go to Chris's website at the Bucket Ministry, there's a video that I think either shows that's that exact hut on the river or one similar to it, which is really great to visualize exactly, because you can see in that picture, which from 2012, right? We didn't have 90 million megapixel cameras at that point. You can still see in a slightly more green image stuff floating in the river, right? I mean, you can see it, right? So my question is, when they drink the water, you know that you're going to get sick. Do they know they're going to get sick? Does their body adjust a little bit? How is it that they drink that water?
John, that's the mother of all questions right there. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think about this every day still. So that first trip, when I brought those 80 filters down, I thought I knew everything about everything, right? And so I get in front of the first village, and I ask everyone at that village, I said, all of you that are sick from drinking this water out of the river, could you raise your hand? And at that point, no one raised their hand. And I'm like, man, I got this whole thing wrong. These people aren't sick. But then I thought, well, maybe I should change the question. So I asked them then, by show of hands, who currently has diarrhea or what they call runny stomach at this moment? And everyone, 60 people raised their hand.
Wow.
So the illustration there, to answer your question, John, is people think in this environment, in these undeveloped countries that don't have access to clean water, they think that having cramping in their stomach and having diarrhea is normal.
Yeah, that's their normal way of life.
And they don't realize that there's another path. They also, culturally, their grandparents drank from this river. Their parents drank from this river. They drink from this river. They're used to children dying young. So culturally, they just think these things are normal. So that's the big picture of this, is ability that this filter has to even change culture once people have these great big holy cow kind of experiences after tasting their first taste of clean water in their life.
And as someone that's a person of faith as well, I can't help but think that analogy really works well, right? How many people don't think or realize their need for something or someone greater, and that's just the normal in their life. So that stood out to me as well. Okay, so thank you for scratching that curiosity, because just like you, I mean, I haven't studied the water crisis in depth, and so just understanding that is helpful. So I want to get to in a sense, that was stupid moment so you go down to the Amazon, you bring these filters, you start doing this work. You had alluded to that you were a business consultant, right? I mean, that's great work if you can get it, as they say, right? So at what point did you say, okay, Chris, the business consultant, is going away. Chris, chief storyteller, bucket ministry guy, is stepping in, and I'm going all in on this?
Well, it's and that's a great question, because from 2012 to at the end of 2018, I worked 2 full-time jobs. One as a business consultant and one with this ministry. And then at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2019, the Lord started opening so many doors for us to help more people around the world with clean water and with the gospel, that our board saw that too. Our board of directors saw that, and they said, hey, we are scaling so fast that we need a full-time person leading this charge. And so at that point, Sherry and I prayed over this. We gave it to the Lord and asked for direction. And I took this, in my world, I thought it was this quantum leap of maybe in the business world, we could consider it to an entrepreneurial jump to start a business, right? But I took this leap of abandoning a 35-year career, abandoning consistent health care coverage, abandoning all the comforts that we had been accustomed to as a family to be part of this work. And I say every single day that we just get to be part of where God is already working. And so in this case, He's already working. He's already helping people. He just lets us be part of it. And that's honestly how I feel with this. So at the beginning of 2019 is when I left that career and been full-time ministry ever since, even though I don't know an awful lot about it, John.
I mean, sometimes it's just saying yes, right? And so that's one of the things we love to talk about on this podcast is those decisions that, you step out, you make the decision, and hey, you may not know exactly how it's going to turn out, right? And we get the benefit of hindsight, but man, one of the things I want to encourage people to do that listen to this podcast is to take that step, right? I took that step, you took that step. Was there anyone around you? In two instances, when you're buying, 80 filters off the shelf and bringing them down to the Amazon, or when you decided to leave your full-time job and do this full-time, was there anyone around you that doubted, that said, that was stupid?
Yeah, and there was, and it was a pretty good list, including some family members, right? Because they love me and they didn't want to see me make a horrible move. But the longer that all those people that had concerns about me were able to witness what God was doing through this work, it became more and more apparent to them that I was supposed to do this. And for most of my life, I've been walking around trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do? I don't think that helping people make money, for me, was why I was created, right? And so I'm trying to find this path. And now, 11 years after that incident in the Amazon, I understand why I was created. And now, it took me learning how to be a business consultant and walking through that to get to this point today. It had to happen. I believe it. But there was a lot of those people. But at the same time, what's even more important, God brought an awful lot of people that were encouragers, that were like, man, we could see what you're doing. We can see how you're affecting change in people's lives, and we want to be part of that, right? Because I'm this imperfect guy, man. I'm as ordinary and as normal as anybody else, but I've got these cracks, right? And God brought those people at the same time that there were the doubters. He brought those people that were encouragers, but they filled in those cracks, John, in a way that I became whole. And a ton of those people are still with our organization now as volunteers, and they've been some of the greatest blessings of my life. So on both sides, I had the doubters, but I had the encouragers too.
You said something that I think is a really important point, and it's that, when we have our "that was stupid" moment, right, and we're talking about how it has worked out, is guarding against the idea of thinking, well, then everything I did up until that point was a waste, right? But I love that you draw out. I mean, as a business consultant, right, you understand probably more so than most people how to create an effective ministry, an effective tool, the ins and outs of buying filters and what it looks like to budget, right? Exactly. So I love that, because we don't want to then just kind of dismiss everything that has happened up to that point. So what does it look like now? I mean, are you getting when I watched the video, you said in the video that I believe for $50 you can provide a bucket that you put water in, you stick one of these filters in the bottom. It kind of looks like a faucet, like a spigot. Yep. And for $50, and I think that lasts them, you can tell me how long it lasts them.
Yeah, so we can provide generational access to a family to clean water for $50. And that includes the bucket, the filter. It includes anti-parasitic medicines to treat the whole family to get the parasites out of their body. It includes 3 follow-up visitations. Our teams go back and make sure they're using it properly. They go back and they share the gospel. They go back and disciple people 3 times. And then we also give those people without a Bible, we give them a Bible in their heart language. We could do all that for $50. So essentially, Lesson, you can take your family to Applebee's and only eat appetizers. For less than you can do that, we can gift a family at least 20 years worth of clean water. The filters will last 20 years or more.
That blows my mind. 20 years that filter can last, especially even in those, because even though the lakes around the Dallas area are dirty, I don't think they're as dirty as the Amazon. So even through heavy use like that, they can last 20 years.
They do. The filter itself is made from kidney dialysis technology, and it's a technology that it's an absolute 0.1 micron technology and it's very, very durable. So it's been lab tested for up to 1 million gallons, and the way it's cleaned is simply using a syringe and forcing water through the filter backwards that basically backflushes it just like a swimming pool filter. So with that kind of regular care and maintenance, it will easily last up to 1 million gallons, if not longer. And so remember when I said that there's like 700 kids a day, the global stat that die from unclean water. That's preventable. This whole thing is preventable. There's a solution already in place. There's other solutions in place, but we just have to prioritize it well. And so the filter becomes this long-lasting solution that, again, provides generational access. We're seeing now second-generation people using their parents' filters.
Wow.
It's pretty cool.
So what did I'm sure at some point you let the filter company know that you're using this for this purpose. What was their reaction? Have they stepped up in any way?
And that's a really big story. So yeah, the filters are manufactured by Sawyer Products in Tampa, Florida. And the owner of Sawyer, he's a believer, he's a follower of Jesus, and he's a kingdom man. And he subsidized the cost of filters to us, and in order to help other people have access to clean water and to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so as an organization, they give away 90% of their profits to organizations like us so we can go out and help people. So their whole strategy is let's sell more stuff so we could give more money away. And super cool organization. We're partnered very deeply with them, and they have given us very large gifts to be able to help large quantities of people. Like right now in Nairobi, Kenya, we are installing 95,228 of these filters, which is approximately a $5 million budget to help 400,000 people have access to clean water in the gospel. And Sawyer gave us the 95,228 filters
Wow.
to do this. So the filter manufacturer, these guys are like rock stars, John. They are the type of people you want to align with.
Well, and we'll also be sure to include a link to their product if anyone wants to support them, because man, that is incredible, especially when it's this idea of social and corporate responsibility is all the rage right now, which is great to hear something like this happening. Let me kind of start wrapping it up here.
Yeah.
There are other organizations, right, that do this kind of thing, but man, it sounds like some of the stuff, especially with what you just said, is how come we haven't heard of you before, Chris? Like, what's going on, man? Like this is, when I first heard about you, I was like, I gotta talk about this, but there are other organizations that maybe, for lack of a better term, appear more sexy, and they've got books and that kind of thing. What are you guys doing to get the word out?
Well, this is an interesting topic. While we are great storytellers, I don't think we're great marketers. And this is actually the third interview that I've done in 11 years. And so we are super hyper focused, John, on helping people and helping people have clean water, helping people know who Jesus is. And honestly, when you are that wrapped up into that end goal, sometimes you forget about, hey, we need some more friends to be able to help us do all this. So somebody said the other day, we may be the best kept secret in ministry, but I'm not sure that's a great thing at this point, because we need a lot of friends to achieve this mission. And simply stated, we've gotten a little smarter, we've developed more friends, and we're trying to, direct as many people as we can to the website, which is thebucketministry.org, and just tried to share this message. Because the one thing I want to share with you is, I think there's a lot of examples of a lot of ordinary people that are doing extraordinary things. And one of my references for that is obviously the Bible. It is rich in history of a bunch of ordinary people doing extraordinary things for the Lord. And I think we're an extremely ordinary organization, because we're just a bunch of ordinary people, a lot of ex-business people. And I think because of that, we are sometimes hyper-focused on solving the problem instead of talking about the work, right? And so we're now focused on trying to do both those things, trying to make more friends, trying to witness to what God is doing around this world through this simple little water filter that attaches to a bucket.
Well, absolutely. Everyone, please go to thebucketministry.org and see how you can partner and help and get even more information. I want to ask this final question, and it is this. It's kind of become the question that I ask everyone towards the end is what do you feel like the lesson of your story is? Maybe it's the lessons of your story, the lessons behind your "that was stupid" story. What would you tell people that is?
Man, I think it's simply this. I felt that I had no training. I had no background to be part of any of this work. I felt like I'm an ordinary guy. I saw a problem. I saw this problem of people drinking dirty water. And in the beginning, I thought, what can I do about that? I'm just a guy, right? I don't even know anything about church or ministry or anything like this. And I think the lessons for this is as long as someone has the ability to say yes, that they can be influential and change the world in some sort of capacity. And I hope that the story becomes an anthem, John, for some of those people sitting on the couch that are seeing a problem, that maybe are like, man, what? I can't do anything about that, or this becomes an anthem for churches even to get outside their four walls and start to work outside the church building itself. And not that they don't, but we'd like to see more, obviously. So I think the lesson is that ordinary people can help other people. Ordinary people can be influential in changing the world.
Well, Chris, I think there are millions of people who are thankful that you've learned that lesson, right? And who now can drink clean water. And I will be rooting you on. We will be rooting you on. And hopefully we can say, in just another year, we can point back to this interview and say, hey, on the That Was Stupid podcast, that was his third only interview in 11 years. And man, we were excited to bring the world that story as early adopters. Chris, thank you so much for joining us again. Go to the website, check out all the work that they are doing at thebucketministry.org. Chris, thank you so much.
John, thank you. Blessings.
I'll tell you what, I am still fascinated by Chris's story and some of the facts that he talked about in that interview, the stuff that they're doing in Kenya to bring 400,000 people clean water. I can't encourage you enough to go to thebucketministry.org and check out everything that they're doing. Listen, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of That Was Stupid, the podcast all about decisions that at the time people thought were crazy, but ended up being life-changing, world-changing, all of the stuff that gives you the good feels, if you will. And if you have a story to share with us, send us a note and we would love to look into it. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back again for the next episode of That Was Stupid.